we're weird, everyone's weird. Like, what even is life? Life on Earth is bizarre.
Who decides what's weird and what's not, what's fascinating and what's not, what deserves to be conserved and what doesn't? Today's guest has spent her whole life falling in love with the things people call weird, unusual, and criminally underappreciated: bees, beetles, and bats. The stuff that doesn't get the calendar or the coffee mug. It's none other than Lucy Houliston, who has built her career taking people from one end of the pendulum of hesitation and ew, get it away from me, to the other end of fascination and a real step towards understanding. Lucy is also a National Geographic Explorer, a brilliant writer, a speaker, and a genuinely gifted storyteller, the kind of a person who could make you fall in love with a woodlouse. In this episode, we get into some properly meaty stuff, like the problem of inclusion in conservation, youth in conservation, storytelling and education, and finding meaning when the world feels like it's on fire. This episode is one part weird wildlife, one part passion, and a very generous spoonful of intense conversation. Honestly, it's not every day you get a conversation this good. Hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, don't forget to follow Lucy and share this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. Welcome, Lucy. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join us on Hope today. And do you want to start with introducing yourself? That's something I love my guests to start with, to give more context to the people listening.
I think this is maybe the hardest question you could possibly ask, because whenever anyone comes to me and says, "What do you do?" I'm like, I don't know, like wildlife storytelling is it in a nutshell, because I've done a real mixture of things, from a bit of hosting and presenting to writing about nature to making videos about it. And that's been everything from the live producing side, actually
Yep.
doing all the digital streaming of shows and writing scripts and directing them and that sort of thing, to editing videos. Social media work I've done as well, to champion all kinds of weird and wonderful creatures, the main one being sloths. Maybe we'll talk a bit about those, because I know everyone loves them. So yeah, it's been a real mix. I consider myself a very creative person and a very curious person, and so I really just follow where that, go with where that takes me. I've gotten to go on some expeditions to some incredible places as part of some charities I'm involved in, supporting their storytelling, their photography, their writing, and also their research as well. I'm currently doing some research into the wildlife in urban orchards in London. So it's a real mix of science and storytelling and creative stuff, and it's been an adventure. So who knows where it will go next. I've also been involved in more recently a TV research role as well. So it's a real mixture.
That's pretty good. I've seen, like, with the choice of animals you have had, they are much more weirder or underappreciated animals. Like, where does that affinity come from? Like, is there any particular experience that draws you towards that?
I mean, the first thing to address is, like, what even is weird? I think nature is inherently weird.
Yeah.
We're weird, everyone's weird. Like, what even is life? Life on Earth is bizarre. But I particularly like the things that most people would consider ugly or gross, or, there's just that disconnect. People struggle to appreciate them as much as they do the big fluffy things.
Yeah.
And I think it started, if we want to take a literal approach to this, in my back garden as a kid, because I think I used to watch things like David Attenborough's Life in the Undergrowth, that focused a lot on the insects. And Blue Planet was another one that I watched when I was very young, but the episode that I was obsessed with was the one about all the deep sea creatures. And I remember vividly this thing called an ostracod. I don't even know what it is. It's this tiny, tiny fish-like thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody listening will know more about ostracods than I do, quite a few people. But it had these big eyes and just the weirdest looking thing, like an alien. And I just fell in love with it. And I think just the fact that I noticed things, I've always been very observant. And especially as a kid, I was quite quiet, but I was always out exploring. I could kind of see adventures in, like, the tiniest things, and I always wanted to get up close to things and look at things. And I was very visual, very artistic, so I was just studied things, really. And so when I went out into my garden, I would notice the tiny things, the insects, and also the weeds as well. Because anything that was green or scuttly or had eyes or anything moved, I was interested in it. And I think looking at those things, and for me, through my innocent eyes, kind of seeing them as equals to the birds and the lions and the elephants and
Yeah.
the all of these things. um, it was just a natural fascination. And then I started to notice, like, oh, other people don't like these things. Why
Yeah.
is that? And I kind of felt sorry for them, especially the
Mhm.
weeds. Coming back to those, like, why is everyone going out and killing them? Why does everyone step on insects? I just had this like empathy for things and creatures that other people
Yeah.
don't pay
Mhm.
much attention to or don't like very much. And I suppose people noticed that because it was
Yeah.
unusual, and I really did care. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I would like to say, well, I felt an affinity for them, because I don't think it's as poetic as like, oh, I felt weird too. I did feel weird at certain
Yeah.
times growing up, but I don't know. It was like I felt sorry for them, and I loved them just as much as anything else, and I couldn't
Mhm.
understand why some creatures were more worthy than others. And I really, because of this interest in kind of ecology, I used to read insect reference books when I was in year 2. I don't know how old I would have been, like 6, 7 maybe.
Yeah.
That was my fun reading, and my poor classmates would sit there and read it aloud. But I think, like, understanding that and understanding the ecology, the level of knowledge that I had then, was probably beyond my years. But I think that helped me understand, like, oh, these weeds are important because they
Hmm.
support this, and those things support that. And so I could see the
Yeah.
value in all creatures. So I was just like, yeah, we need to protect all
Mhm.
creatures. And that was really my mission. And yeah, give me a fluffy kitten or a fluffy panda or anything. I could take it or leave it. But an insect with big boggle eyes and like weird
Yeah.
fluff coming out his head or whatever, I'm squealing, and I want to see it up close and hold it and whatever. And I've always been like that. I don't know why, but that's just what I've always been drawn to, and I
Yeah.
think these things are cute. So that's just what I kind of gravitated towards, and always have.
I'm just curious, how did people react to it? Because I can imagine, like, when I go to people and I'm like, look, this snake looks really cute. And that's not a shared opinion with the people. But what did, like, people around you think?
I think a few people I have managed to open their eyes, but I wouldn't say change their
Yeah.
minds.
Yeah.
Maybe rather than just run away screaming, they're more like, okay, I'll run away screaming, but then I'll listen to you talk about it from a distance. It's like
Yeah.
one of those.
Yeah. That's a
But
fair
I
deal.
don't know. I have had some people say, I think there are a lot of animals where they're just vilified, and people don't actually stop to think, or they haven't been given the opportunity to learn about the actual importance of those things.
Hmm.
And I think once you tell people that, they don't have to love them. They don't have to want them in their garden necessarily or whatever. But I think I have had a lot of people say either, oh, I didn't know about that animal and that's really cool.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out more about them, or I didn't realize that they actually did that. Like wasps is a great example. Even the thing of, like, they eat caterpillars, they do actually have a role to play in terms of
Hmm.
pest control. They don't just go around stinging everyone, and that's that. That they're connected to all the other things around them. And it's complicated and it's hard to get your head around. But yeah, I don't think I've inspired anyone who has a phobia or really dislikes something to suddenly love it,
Yeah.
but it's just opening people's minds and eyes a little bit, and
Hmm.
and maybe encouraging them to think about nature in a different way. And it's like, if I don't like that thing, it's okay, but just acknowledging that it does have a role to play if we want
Yeah.
to see it from that
Hmm.
perspective of, like, things serve a function and keep our ecosystems healthy,
Yeah.
and support all other kinds of life.
Perfect. Like, I definitely do have a questions about the way you go about educating people, like your
Mm.
approach to it. But before that, like, I did notice a few themes with like what your work revolves around, and one of those was youth and conservation, for example. And
Yes.
what I was thinking lately was, so the past decade, I believe that youth voices have increasingly been invited to environmental discussions and debates in general. But I
Mm.
also feel that that has been through advisory boards and youth councils and everything. But being a young conservationist, do you think we are actually given enough say, or is it simply to showcase the presence of youngsters or young people in the room? And I say this because the majority of youth in conservation right now, they do struggle with finding opportunities, finding jobs, and finding ways to voice their opinions, particularly in front of the more experienced folks who might say that you should not be saying this or you should not be saying that because you don't have the experience to support your claims. What would you say in that case?
Yeah. It's a really difficult one. And I do think sometimes some of these initiatives, not just purely youth focused ones, but other diversity ones, can feel a bit tokenistic, can
Yeah,
feel a bit tick boxy. But at the same time, I think there is this sort of uncomfortable bump in the road.
yeah.
That is what that is, that we need to sort of push through for
Hmm.
people to be able to see themselves in that space and feel like they can offer something and they can be heard. Um, as for whether young people in those opportunities, in those roles, have an actual impact, I think really was the question was, are they just there to
Yeah, yeah,
for performance's sake, sort of thing, for the looks of it? I think there is an element of those opportunities are what you make them. Like, I think I know it's tricky to kind of not to
yeah,
put all the pressure and all the responsibility on the young person doing volunteering or whatever it is, but like, making sure that you are open to opportunities and you are
yeah,
curious and you do network and you know are curious about what other people are doing and want
hmm,
to speak to them and learn from them. That can really sort of propel people in those roles
yeah,
and open more doors
yeah,
and create opportunities for them to have a bit more influence, and to share their opinions and thoughts and ideas more widely. There are I think the organisations that I've been involved
hmm,
with, shout out to Reserve for the Youth Land Trust.
yeah,
I've been volunteering with them since 2019 and I am on their board. I've done some media work for them. They are, by definition, a youth-led organisation, and I see from my involvement with them, like, it really is the young people who are involved. We have some people that are less involved. I mean, I'm not particularly involved in the more like active side of
yeah,
things now compared to a few years ago. I've taken a bit of a step back, but like, if you want to be involved, there you can do so much.
hmm,
Whether it's being on the ground at conferences and handing out letters that kids have written saying why, explaining why they love wildlife
yeah,
and why they think world leaders should protect it to world leaders, or you know posting a live to announce an Instagram live to announce the launch of a new reserve project, to going into schools, talking to schools, to running science projects at
hmm,
new reserves and coming up with concepts and meeting with partners, chatting with researchers, that sort of thing. Like, there's so much going on that I'm not even aware of how much is
yeah,
going on, because there's so much going on and everyone involved has so much agency. So I think it depends on the program as well. It depends on the organization. Of course, that organisation, it is youth-led, whereas some of the other groups, broader conservation groups, they have a
yeah,
youth board. But
yeah,
the main thing they're doing is very broad,
hmm,
and it's about all people. And so it's a difficult question to answer. I do think things are moving in the right direction. My, as I get older, I suppose the question mark hanging over everything for me is like, after what happens when you're no longer youth,
yeah,
like you say, there's that funny point, and
Hmm.
I've experienced it, and some other people I know seem to have experienced it as well, where it's like you are trying to build a life and some financial security for yourself. And it is so hard, as you say, to get paid opportunities in
Hmm.
this space at the moment and to find work. And yeah, you kind of have to step away from some of that stuff. Some people do find that they have to step away and focus on other things, to be able to sort of pay their way, and that's a funny time,
Yeah.
because you can feel like, I really want to be doing this, but
Hmm.
priorities are elsewhere. It's
Yeah.
it's it's that challenge when you get to a certain point in your life and your career, and
Hmm.
which is tricky to navigate. So the what's next, the post-youth
Yeah. Yeah.
environment for me is interesting, but it's so nice to see like new people coming in all the time, just keeping the fresh ideas. It's not like it was one group of us and it's all fizzling out. It's like
Hmm.
there's a constant turnover of
Yeah.
young people with fresh ideas that are coming in and shaping the things that these organisations are doing, which is so nice to see.
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, a few points there, but I'll just pick on the first one where you mentioned that it's important for people to kind of showcase themselves and go out there, introduce themselves, be more open to opportunities. But like in one of the episodes, it was with Rick Schwartz. If you don't know him, he's one of the really good educators, and he used to do a lot of work with San Diego Zoo, and he
Yeah,
has his own podcast as well, and he has done some teaching work in colleges. So we are talking about what are the most general kind of complaints that young conservationists come to you with,
mm,
and his first number one point was that they usually face this kind of burnout with a lot of overexposure. And since conservation is kind of a caring role where you're very compassionate about nature and wildlife, it tends to lead to a burnout at some point in the whole career. And what do you think about it? Like, have you faced any such experiences? Because you in particularly are trying to educate people about animals that can be a bit of a hard sell, for example insects, which people
yeah.
care even less about. So how does that go for you?
It's I think I've cared about wildlife, and it's been a part of my life for so long that I could never see it. I could never see myself not caring about it. I have
Yeah.
definitely, particularly in the last few years, been through times that have been very difficult,
Yeah.
personally, and kind of just the momentum to keep going and to
Yeah.
keep pushing, and being, I was going around to different places giving talks and all of this, and I don't know, you just there are points where you think, what is this doing?
Yeah.
Especially, I've had conversations with people about social media, for example. I still feel a pressure to post on social media because it's a portfolio essentially for me, and I do see it as a creative outlet to an extent. The more that time goes on and the more it changes, the more I feel like I have to post for the sake of
Yeah.
posting, and
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how I feel about that, and I just, yeah. So there definitely have been points where I've questioned, is this way of communicating reaching the right people, and if it isn't, what do I do?
Yeah.
There's there's always a lot of talk about, hope, and
Yeah.
like, I do believe that we can change things. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. Like, you've got to have
Mm-hmm.
some sort of faith in, being able to be better. As a conservationist, as a person, as you know, someone that is shaping the environment and community that's shaping the environment. Um, so I don't know. Like, I've never completely lost it, but I think it's been more of a. It definitely got to a point where it was really hard to make it feel like it was a career. Like we came back
Yeah.
to before. I hate for it to be about, and this was the hardest thing. I hate for it to be about money, but it did get to a point where I was like, I really need to pay my bills,
Yeah.
and this isn't doing it. Like, it's the momentum isn't there. It's not picking up, and so I did have to reprioritize.
Yeah.
Step away from some volunteer roles because things were getting a bit much, and
Mm-hmm.
even though I really cared about that stuff, I had to think about other things, and that was really tricky. So yeah, it's a difficult balance. I feel like I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I am still hopeful, and I think also it can get quite isolating,
Yeah.
especially if you start. And I've noticed this recently. If things go quiet and you're not talking directly to people,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just doing it online, and talking to the same people all the time in the same echo chambers, you start to feel quite isolated, and like what you're saying isn't reaching the people whose minds it could really change. It's like
Yes.
you're talking to the people that already know, and not really connecting with anyone. And I think that can be a real issue if you sort
Yeah.
of don't feel that connection, and you have to sort of bounce off people, I think. So I think, like, lately I've been thinking about, we spoke about it I think before we started recording, but this sort of interdisciplinary approach, and like other spaces
Mm-hmm.
where environmentalism and conservation can be brought in, whether
Yeah.
it's music or the arts, or it kind of, yeah, just sort of reaching out to other communities, I feel
Yeah.
like can help to reinvigorate when you're feeling a bit stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely understand the social media aspect which you mentioned. That's one of the reasons I kind of step back, because I prefer much more face to face and kind of talking to people and understanding them better, like, rather than just posting and kind of following the trends and everything. So
Yeah.
that's very much relatable. But yeah, another thing you mentioned earlier was kind of making conservation really accessible for people and inclusion, for example. And
Mm.
I believe like conservation still has a big problem of inclusion and including people. And I was reading some of the reports which again mentioned financial constraints, lack of representation, unpaid volunteering, and people feeling that they don't belong here, or people like them are not conservationists, for example. What, like, I know you have done some work with Bat Conservation Trust a few years back, and that did involve working with communities. So what have your experiences taught you about such barriers still existing, and what, if you had to like think of, what do you think we as conservationists or conservation organizations are kind of doing wrong when it comes to inclusion and including people,
Mm.
particularly when diversity is such a big conversation today, and wanting to include people, and you have, like, more than people, you have hoardings which show people with different ethnic backgrounds, but not
Mm.
actual people supporting that cause.
Yeah. It's another very complex issue. I mean, my eyes were definitely opened when I was working at the Bat
Yeah.
Conservation Trust, and we ran some workshops, and I think this works really well. I mentioned the interdisciplinary thing. We ran some storytelling workshops with a wonderful organisation called Wanderers of Colour, in collaboration with them, and Sustainably Muslim was the other group that we worked with, to try and, yeah, like engage new audiences with bats and nocturnal wildlife in urban spaces around the UK. And those storytelling workshops, people wrote poetry about their relationship with nature, essentially, and some of the stuff that people shared in that way, and sort of, there was a conversation where me and my colleagues stepped out of the room and just gave people space to, a safe space to just chat and share their experiences, of being in the outdoors, and the wonders, but also the challenges they'd faced. And they wrote poems and things and reflections and things. And yeah, what came out of that was really powerful. And I think there are a lot of reports, as you say, and statistics, but
Yeah.
when you actually hear from people their experiences, I think that really does hammer it home and move you. Like
Yeah.
that's the human side of it. And you realize, yeah, like, obviously these are, real, all of these issues that we speak about, like they are affecting people.
Yeah.
They're not just numbers on a page. And I think one thing I would say works well from my experience is having that more interdisciplinary approach, not trying to be so like science focused or conservation focused all the time, bringing in other things that may bring new crowds in.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's people that are into dance or art or music and all of the things that we've spoken about. Because you don't have to sort of shove it down people's throats, the idea of, you know, science and conservation, animals are great. It's like you can explore the natural world through photography or filmmaking or painting or poetry or anything that like you enjoy, and we all have our own skills and interests to bring to the table. And I think the main thing is that if you're passionate about what you do,
Yeah.
you know, there's normally always an avenue to make that, turn that into something that benefits the environment in some way, whether it's selling something to raise funds or, you know, if people see the need for it and they want to help in some way, contribute in some way, there normally is a way.
Yeah.
So I think like that curiosity and open-mindedness about how we approach it is really important. I can't really say about what people are doing wrong. I think, you know, it's a very nuanced thing, and I can only speak, you know, of my
Yeah.
experiences. And I, you know, represent some traditionally underrepresented groups, but obviously not the full spectrum, or barely any. So it's hard to say. I think, the financial barriers that you mentioned is definitely something that has impacted me. It does sometimes feel like you can see it, that the people who have had a bit more financial security maybe are a bit more comfortable taking risks and taking on these volunteering opportunities. They're able to do that and can gain more experience and get ahead of others. I think other people can end up feeling a bit behind, or just have this, I mean, I personally have it, of just a bit of a fear, really.
Yeah.
This you know, if I try something and it doesn't work out, I don't know if it's going to be okay, you know. I don't know, because I think I have had to worry about, you know, finances and things, and I don't know. We all have our own things like that, don't we? We all have our own struggles, but I think that might be. I think things are moving in the right direction. Slowly, maybe a lot more slowly than we need them to. I wish there was a clear answer as to how we can solve this problem. It seems like a bit of a slow burn, and it seems like we are, as I say, in the right direction. I just think, we need to listen to each other a bit more and uplift new people. And I see it as well, you know, the same people are platformed. People who represent a certain demographic, you know, they get a lot of opportunities, which is wonderful for them. But also there are so many talented conservationists, environmentalists, you know, people that are interested in wildlife, amateur naturalists. I think creating opportunities to platform them is really important, because we're all in this together. And one thing I love about this space is that people are so supportive. You know, that it doesn't feel like we're in competition with each other. It's like, do you want help with that? Yeah, sure. I need help to do this project. Yeah, I'd love to get on board, you know. And it's really lovely. And but I do, we need to be mindful of that, I think, and lean into that. I think it's really nice.
Yeah. Interesting. And I was talking about education earlier. Like I watched a lot of your videos and how you kind of do your storytelling and education, and I noticed like you usually use a lot of photographs and props and maps, particularly. And I was really curious, like because they didn't seem just like visual tools, but they really help with the storytelling aspect of things as well. So, like, what's your approach in general when it comes to education and conducting such sessions?
Right.
I find it really cool.
I don't know. I think I am quite a visual person, and I think one of my favorite things, even if I'm just preparing like a PowerPoint presentation, is you know, at the end of it, putting all the videos in. Like I just think, oh, what do they say? A picture paints 1,000 words. And it's like, I think because when I was growing up, like my aspiration was to work in natural history TV. So like when I give a presentation, even if it's just a talk, I'm sort of thinking about, I just get carried away. I'm like, oh, let's have like fireworks
Yeah.
and puppets and music and whatever else. In an ideal world, I would have that. And I think actually I've got a lot of creative projects. That's probably why some of them are slow to get off the ground, because I'm like, it must be this huge
Yeah.
spectacle. And it's my friends that come in and they're like, Lucy, scale down. Like, that's not going to
Yeah.
work. But I think, yeah, I just think people want to look at something, and when you're talking about wildlife looks so cool. So we
Yeah.
want to see it. And I just think I always think of things in kind of layers. Like there's the writing that builds the skeleton of the talk, but then that's not done, you know, like you there are these different
Yeah.
levels of, like, there's presenting it in an engaging way, but I think, yeah, the visuals for me are really important because I am, as I've said, like quite a visual person. I think it just comes naturally to me to kind of, if you say it, people want to see it. I think that's one thing I always
Yeah.
try and remember. So, and people do learn in different ways. So it can be really beneficial for those who are more visual learners, or, yeah, I try and keep it as varied as possible
Yeah.
so that everyone can kind of come away with something. And I think the videos that you watched, possibly were they my National Geographic
Yes. Yeah.
Explorer
Yeah.
classroom
Yeah. Yeah.
things? Those were for kids of certain ages.
Yeah.
I did 2 different age groups, and I worked with some really great educators at Nat Geo who sent me some advice and tips on creating engaging presentations and lessons for those age groups. And you think there are only a few years difference between them, but the way that they learn and respond
Yeah.
to things so different.
Hmm.
So I think just understanding that is really important. And yeah, I learned an awful lot in that process actually, but it was just so fun because it is more of a, I just always see it like a show, you know,
Yeah.
like it's never just a talk, it's a thing. And it, like, let's make it fun, you know. That's one of my favorite parts, is bringing in all the visual stuff and the fun
Mhm.
stuff, the interactive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I learned as well because, like, you were showing the difference between the butterfly and the moth, and the picture of the moth you had, I guess that was a Jersey tiger moth. I might be very wrong.
I think you're on the right track. I think, if I remember right, it was a garden tiger moth.
Was it? Because I did
Orange
find a
and
similar
possible.
moth today, and I'm
A
not sure if
Jersey
it's the
tiger
same
moth.
one.
I've been sent a picture of, somebody sent me a photo of one the other day.
Does
Like,
it look similar?
yes,
Yeah?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah.
I learned
Someone
something.
sent me a photo the other day of one of those. Like, could you identify this for this person's mum? So the amount of bug photos and random pictures of things I get, it's like, can you identify this? What's this? What's this? What's this? I admit I do have to
Yeah,
use search engine most of the time, but yeah, it
that's very
always makes
true.
me laugh.
And you were talking about education, but, like, for example, if you had to sell someone, I mean, for the lack of the better word, sell the idea of
Hmm.
insects and habitats which insects live in, I guess that's much more challenging. So, what kind of educational angle would you use there?
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like I've been lucky in that those sorts of things. I have done a lot of outreach to younger kids, I suppose. I
Mhm.
don't know about a lot, but you know, some of my favorite things I've done have been to young kids. And the thing is, they're so open-minded,
Yeah.
and it almost, I don't think insects are a hard sell to them.
Hmm.
Um, I've spoken before about, I think really it's this sort of intergenerational thing. I mean, if the kids are interested, the parents are kind of forced to
Yeah.
at
Fair.
least think
Yeah.
about these things.
Yeah.
I think the older you get, sometimes the more set in your
Yeah.
opinions you can become about certain things. So yeah, maybe it's just a sneaky way of like, get to the kids and then they'll convince their parents that insects are great. I think I always try and bring in some like humor and relatability. Like I've said before, I don't go in assuming that anyone knows anything.
Yeah.
And but there's a fine line between um, not dumbing things down, but
Hmm.
also making sure it is accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you. how you do that well.
Hmm.
I've been told that I do it well, but I don't know. Like it's like I want to make sure that everybody is up to speed, but you have
Yeah.
to say it in a way that isn't going to make the people who already know
Yeah.
feel bored or switch off or feel spoken down to, sort of thing. Like it's okay to remind people of stuff they already know. It probably makes them feel great about themselves because they're like, yeah, I remember this. I know. I think, and I've had points in the past where I've been felt quite intimidated by this idea of teaching kids about stuff. It's like, oh, how am I going to do this? They learn in such different ways. Is that going to be too complicated for them? But I've had conversations with people and they've said, you'd be surprised at how much they can absorb. And you probably don't need to make it that much different than if you were talking to an adult lay audience, non-scientific audience, however you want to say. And so I think I like to know things. I think the key for me is like if I understand it and can really break it down, then I know I can do an okay job at explaining it to people. And it feels like there's so much difference, but also no difference at all in sort of how kids and adults learn to a degree. It's like they want the story, they want the human element. I think that's so key is like bring in your own stories, bring in a bit of humor, because they don't just want facts thrown at them. They want to be able to relate it to a person and to feel like they're on an adventure, you're taking them with you on a little discovery or journey or something, and I think that is storytelling, isn't it? And I think that's what that's what I try and bring to it. I wouldn't call myself an educator, I mean I've got education projects, but it's something I'm learning on the job.
That's good.
But I think storytelling, that's what's enabled me to do it though. It is this thing of like finding threads and weaving everything together and taking people from that place to that place in a fun way. And
have you done like any community work with your masters, like working with the orchards? Like, did you have any chance to do some community engagement and talk to people about it?
I'd love to do more. I've been I keep promising to people because I've worked with, I think I surveyed 30 plus different orchards around London. And I think when people think about orchards, they think of a huge field full of apple trees. But I think the definition of an orchard is any space with 5 or more fruit trees or something. So some of these places are quite tiny and they're tucked away in the corner of parks. So I've been able to work with different park friends of groups and biodiversity groups and museums and things to survey the orchards. I've given a couple of talks now, one at a museum that's got an orchard in its grounds that I surveyed the insects in. It's been really lovely to see. I think there's this idea that people aren't doing much for nature in cities or people are really disconnected from nature in cities. But then I email someone saying, can I catch some bees in some beetles in your orchard or whatever? And they say, and then, they introduce me to this person and this person, and I go and give a talk, and there's this, this community of people that come together to protect nature on their local patch. And it's like, wow, people are doing so much. I see people come into the orchards and water the trees, check the trees, prune them and things like that. So people are so engaged, which has been really nice. And like I say, one of the things, it isn't a science communication project. And this has been the issue, is I kind of wanted it to be. So I've gone out and I've got all this data and I've said to people, I'll send you newsletters and I'll come and give talks and I'll do this and I'll do that. But it's been quite all consuming just from the data collection and analysis point of view. So it's been slow going with that, and I haven't done as much as I wanted to. But I've done some of it, and I hope to do more, because people are emailing me saying, asking about updates and things. People are really engaged, which I really appreciate. And I I think one of the most rewarding parts of it will be when I can finally, eventually, share my lists of species with people, and they can share those with visitors to the parks and things like that. You know, that's the part that I think is I find that one of the most enjoyable and rewarding parts of that sort of a project. And it's what drew me to it, really, is working in urban spaces means you do get to, you're not just writing something that 2 people will read and then give you a mark for. You're kind of doing something that community groups can actually use to engage people with wildlife. And also, I should mention the Orchard Project as well, which is the charity that I'm doing it in partnership with. The findings obviously will help them, or is the hope anyway, to sort of design and manage their orchards in ways that are better for wildlife, but also it helps with their communications and community outreach and things to say, we've got these animals in this orchard and that sort of thing. So that's the thing that's excited me most about this project, even though it technically isn't part of the project. It's just something I've thrown in there because I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's a really interesting project. But I did have another question. I don't think it's a very deep or a question you have to really think about, but I found it really funny because like most of the videos I watched of yours, the host would mention you as an activist, and there was one of the videos where you were like, I don't really like the word activism. Why is that? Like what do you associate with the word activism? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's, I don't like the word. I think it has a place, you know, like I think it can get misconstrued. I think it has a lot of negative connotations to a lot of people. They think of people doing very disruptive things to campaign about things that they don't like. It's more the fact that I don't really see myself as an activist.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I don't know, maybe because I have some of those misconceptions. I feel like I need to be out on marches and things. And I mean, I've done that, but I don't know. I feel like conservation in itself, like it is an action. Sort of believing in any of these things, you can't just sit and think about it. You've got to go out and do something, and you want to when you see the problems, you know, the world is facing, and you work or move in this space, exist in this space. Yeah, I think it can be quite a narrow definition in a lot of people's eyes. And also I think a lot of people, and I think this is where it stemmed from, a lot of people combined sort of climate activism with biodiversity action, conservation, whatever you want to call it. And I could, at the time, have stood up and spoken about biodiversity decline very eloquently, I think, whereas climate breakdown, not really my forte. Of course I care about it, and of course it's connected to biodiversity loss and vice versa, but I think the people doing a lot of the campaigning about climate have a very different knowledge base than I do. You know, mine's more about ecology and animals, and so I think I was cautious of activists because of that. So I think people say, "Oh, then you must do all the climate stuff as well." When I don't feel as connected to that. So yeah, and I just, and sometimes I'm like, I guess I have a lot of respect for activists because I think I'm not doing that. I'm not doing enough to call myself an activist. Honestly, I always feel like I should and could be doing more. And you know, there are so many things out there that we care about and could be out there campaigning for, fighting for, raising awareness of, fundraising for. So, you know, I see activists as very passionate people, and I guess I don't see myself as that. Maybe other people, I don't know, but I'm just doing my best and plodding along over here, doing my thing, and I don't feel like it's as, I kind of have a lot of admiration for them as well, and don't put myself in
Yeah, that's fair.
that sort of thing. But yeah, but how much of that is linked to that idea of like you've got to be out,
Yeah, yeah.
marching and doing really crazy things? I don't know,
Hmm.
which obviously isn't necessarily true, but it's all these names and labels. I suppose they're quite subjective anyway.
Yeah.
What is an environmentalist?
Hmm.
What is a conservationist? Even that term is kind of can be quite divisive, I
Yeah.
suppose. It has been in the past. Like there have been conversations around that. Should we be using that term? Um, so so yeah,
Hmm.
it's
It makes
it's a
sense. Like, this is one of the last questions, but like, I don't think or expect you to have all the correct data or knowledge about this one,
Mm.
because frankly I don't have as well. But it's just one of the things I've been thinking. Yesterday I was talking to one of my friends, and we were talking about how throughout history we have often assumed that we'll create certain new technology which would be really good, kind of explore, as we were talking about, interdisciplinary pathways and see if it can really help us solve environmental problems which, funny enough, were created by previous technologies. And today, like with all the new tech like AI, debates around de-extinction and data centers and stuff, do you think, like, just from your perspective, is there a risk that we might become so confident in future technological solutions that we lose the sight of the need to fundamentally change how we live alongside nature today, if that makes
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, I've always been worried by the idea of de-extinction, and I get
Yeah.
the curiosity around it, but it's this idea of like, well, if we lose it, that's fine. We can just replace it.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are all sorts of thoughts that sort of conjures up, but you can't, because if even if you make an animal and
Yeah.
you put it, it's not going to behave like
Hmm.
you know the animal did when it spent all this time evolving and interacting with the world around it. And I just we can't make nature feel replaceable.
Yeah.
We need to be really careful about that, because it isn't. um, it's irreplaceable and it's very delicate,
Hmm.
and there's so much we don't know about our own impact
Yeah.
on the earth. I think a lot of these things maybe assume that we do and that there's a quick fix, and the fixes themselves may have an impact,
Yeah.
and and we don't understand those yet. So
Hmm.
I just think every solution creates more problems, I think.
Yeah.
And that sounds really downbeat, but that it's
Yeah.
not like there is no silver bullet. That's the
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
So we just need to be careful. Nature works,
Hmm.
and we should protect that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's important, I suppose, that we do invest in technologies and explore technologies and things, because they may be
Hmm.
a solution in the future. They may help, but I hope that doesn't distract us from what is still here
Hmm.
and what we can do now to protect what we've already got.
Yeah. And yeah, like, even for me, like, I'm utterly fascinated by the concept of de-extinction. I don't understand the nitty-gritties of it, so I would love to have someone to actually talk about de-extinction. But I
Yeah.
really find it fascinating. But I also think, like, would it become a privilege for us to be like, okay, this species, if it goes away, we can bring it back? I don't really want that to happen with nature.
Yeah. And also going back to where we started in terms of, weird wildlife and all
Yeah.
those overlooked, unloved species. What it would be very odd, wouldn't it? Because it would be those animals that people like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
got brought
Exactly.
back. But not all the little ones that
Yeah.
people don't necessarily think about,
Hmm.
that arguably play a
Yeah.
more you know fundamental role in
Yeah.
sustaining these ecosystems. I don't know, we don't understand nature.
Yeah.
We don't. It's still so many unknowns. We don't even know what's out there.
Yeah.
So many undiscovered species and processes that we're only just beginning to understand. And yeah, it's it's we have to be very careful, I think.
Yeah, that's good. So one of the last questions. This might seem a bit dark to ask to anyone,
Yeah,
but
go for
it's still a question like I really think about sometimes. So
it.
like many conservationists have dedicated their lives to solving problems like habitat loss or biodiversity loss. But the thing is that they'll never really realistically, to be honest, live to really see it resolved. So how do you personally like find meaning in working towards an outcome that you
Mm.
might not really witness it being resolved?
Yeah, I
I know
don't think
that's a
that's
weird question.
no. I don't. I think yeah. You when you care about something so much and it's such a huge part of your life,
Yeah,
you're going to want to engage with it. And unfortunately, at the moment, that thing that I care about and is such a huge part of my life and all of our lives is in trouble.
yeah,
So, what am I going to do? Am I going to sit there and look and go, oh no? Or am I going to do something about it? I just think I don't really think about the outcome. There's always the thought that pops up, going back to our conversation earlier about whether I feel, hopeless or burnt out at any point. It's like, is this going to work?
hmm,
What in 100 years time or however long is this animal still going to be here? Are we still going to be here?
yeah,
What is going to be the state of the earth? I don't know, but yeah, it's funny because I don't really think about that. I don't think about I'm not doing it to see results. I'm not doing it for me.
hmm,
I'm doing it for, I suppose, well, maybe I am to an extent, because I couldn't sit there and just ignore things, but I don't know. I just feel compelled to do something about it.
yeah,
And I haven't really thought about. I've thought about what if it doesn't work out, and I've thought about what if it does. I mean, that's what drives it, I
yeah,
suppose, is this thing that, well, hopefully this does do what we want it to do. But I'm not working toward a big end goal. It's
yeah,
it's like it's a constant process of like learning and learning to be better and contribute more and in different ways. And uh, yeah, there's always like more that can be done. And I think that's really what I'm focused on, is like now and what's next and what more can I do now to try and make things better, rather than will I see this in
yeah,
a few decades time, will I ever see the impacts of this? Yeah, because we don't know, do we? We don't know what's
yeah.
ahead at all, and it can be it's a scary thought, but wildlife is weird and the world is a weird place.
It surely is. Do you want to, like, it's pretty much the end of the podcast, and I usually love for my guests to share kind of a message of hope because, like, there are a lot of things that are going wrong and people are working towards making things better. So it's obviously good for people to listen to something really positive and hopeful. So do you have anything for the people to listen to?
Yeah. This may not sound as hopeful as
Hmm.
it could. I don't know. I think we've spoken about, the sort of difficult feelings and the challenges that come up when it comes to being in this space. And I think, like, a lot of the time, those things can sort of all exist together.
Yeah,
It's not like you need to feel hopeful all the time and you need to feel energized all the time and optimistic all the time. You can feel those things and also feel, yeah, what is the state of the world going to be in 100 years, or is this going to have an impact? Am I talking to the right people? There are still all these problems that I'm not addressing. I don't feel like I'm doing enough. I think we all have our own piece of the puzzle, in that we all bring our own interests and skills, and I think passion is really the key thing. Whatever you're interested in and whatever skills you bring and things you love doing,
yeah,
if you can use that to have a positive impact on the planet in any way, I think that is a good thing, and I would encourage anyone to do that. And that's what I try and do. Is, you know, whatever I'm interested in, whatever skills I've learned, is how can I use these to help protect the weird and not so weird wildlife that I love so much. So yeah, I think it's a cliche, but every little does help. You know, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but we can all chip away at this problem together.
Sounds good. Before we say bye-bye to the audience, do you have any questions for me? Any views or anything you want to say about the podcast as well?
Questions for you.
Yeah, if you want to take some revenge, go for it.
Um, I'm guessing you've had a chance to share your message of hope with people as well.
I have, yeah. It's pretty
Yeah.
small, to be honest.
And what is it?
It's honestly just to like stay passionate and kind of do
Mm,
things you feel give meaning to your life, and that
yeah,
can be as simple as doing plumbing, for example. If you feel
yeah,
that's something you enjoy and gives meaning to your life,
yeah.
yeah, that's mostly it.
And I think, like, how have you found? I imagine that this podcast is really great for helping you feel like more motivated, more connected to people around you who are
Yeah.
doing a similar thing and trying to spread the word and get people excited about conservation and
Mm.
taking action. Like, I don't know, what have the benefits been of this podcast, and has it created that sense of community for you? Like, how has it been
I mean, to be
in that?
honestly, now it might seem like now it's for a much bigger motive of conservation and kind of reaching out to
Mm,
people and learning from them. But honestly, it started from a very selfish point of view. Like, I was just curious and I really wanted to learn what is happening around the world, how people approach their career, and how does it work
mm,
for them, and what's their perspective, and kind of talking through my perspectives and seeing what people feel about it, to see just getting to know people better, and in the process learning more about conservation. And I guess it really helps you kind of build that community, because like after my podcast I prefer like staying in touch with my guests. I kind of
yeah,
talk to them, and a good few of them actually have some offline projects with as well, so that kind of really helps take that relation forward, and kind of do the, because during the podcast I really get to know them better, and I feel if my goals align with them, and if I feel we are really trying to do something good for conservation, so it should hopefully extend and be just more than just a single episode or a podcast.
nice. Yeah, it's I'm gonna have to go back and listen to more episodes because I'm so glad you reached out, because it is just, I love finding out about these projects and I think it's so cool what you're
Yeah.
doing, and yeah, very happy to be here. It's been fun.